welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy chess content like this, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's go. Okay, so here we have another position where we're on the defensive. So black is down a pawn. They can't quite reach the Philidor position, but still enough here to be able to draw. Now, as we saw in the previous video, when we have the pawns on the C, D, E, and F files, what happens here is we need to go with active defense. Okay, so then much in the spirit of the previous video, Rook A1 is the correct move, with the idea is that we're going to start attacking from behind. Okay, now white here goes King E6. So the plan is to advance the king to support the advance of the pawn. So important to note here, we don't want to go King D6, right? King D6 runs into Rook A6 check. You just blundered your rook. It's a terrible way to lose a game. Kind of a silly mistake, but always possible, so do keep that in mind. So we have King E6, and now a very important move, Rook to D1. Now it's important to place the rook behind the pawn if we're going to stop it from advancing. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into this position because I think it's worth looking at. So what happens if Rook E1 check? Why is this move losing? So we can avoid all this sort of stuff that we're going to see ahead here if we just play the correct Rook D1, right? But it's also good to know in case we have the attacking side and the defending side plays the incorrect defense with Rook E1. How do you win this? So this position already is losing for the black pieces, and like I said, we're gonna do a deep dive. There's quite a few lines here, a lot of nuances, a lot of details, which I think are very worth committing to memory. I think you're going to save a lot of points and win a lot of points if you know these endgames. So let's go into it. So Rook E1 check, King to D6, threatening checkmate with Rook G8 check. So the defensive method always, as remember, is moving the king to the short side of the pawn or the short side of the board. So King C8 would be the move. Rook to G8 check and King to B7. Now here there's a fancy little maneuver. We're going to see the point of it in just a second. So the move is Rook to G7 check. This is a very strong move. Now we've seen a lot of times the attacking side, what they're trying to maneuver is to find a way so that they could advance the king, so that in turn they can advance the pawn. However, in this position, King D7 is a blunder. That draws a winning endgame. So why is King D7 a blunder? So let's take a look at the winning line first, and then we'll go back to this and see the differences. So the winning move here, Rook to G7 check, King to C8, Rook C7 check. The king comes back to D8, trying to get, defending, bringing the king to the queening square. And here in this position, Rook H7. What a strong move. I'm actually going to put an exclamation mark on this because this is a great move. Bringing the rook to the H file, threatening checkmate once again. So the black pieces once again go with King to C8, moving the king to the short side of the board. Rook to H8 check. King to B7, and only then do we play King D7 with a winning position. Now, what is the difference between that and this? So the only thing that's changing here is that in the drawn position, the rook is on the G file, and in the winning position, the rook is on the H file. So what happens here, continuing the line that wins, because the rook is on the H file, black is now forced to go to the G file, which is the equivalent of attacking from the short side of the pawn. So Rook G1, D6, Rook G7 check, King E6, the pawn's marching forward, Rook to G6 check, King to E7. And now in this position we see king c6, threatening the pawn. Now, if black is trying to be annoying here and continue just giving checks, king g7 check, king f6, and then rook d7, just king e6, and this is a very it's a simple victory, to be honest. The rook is controlling the queening square. You really can't stop it. But there is a bit more of a stubborn defense here, which is king c6 attacking the pawn. So here we have rook c8 check, so that the king has to step further away. King d5, we advance the pawn. Rook to g7 check. King e8, rook here, g8 check, king f7, and you ran out of checks. You have ran out of checks. The rook has nowhere to go, has to drop back, and then I'm just going to be queening with check. And here we kind of see the difference from this position and this position. In this position, if we are lazy and we play king d7 without doing the whole maneuver to bring the rook to the h file, we allow black to go to the far side of the board with rook to h1. And now in this position, we're going to continue with the same plan, which is d6, check, king to e6, check on h6, king e7. This is all the same exact moves. King to c6, attacking the pawn once again. Rook to c8 check, king here. We advance the pawn, but now the rook is too far. So the king, after this check, if you come here, check, you can't continue harassing the rook because the pawn is going to drop. So there's your importance in this position of going just one little extra move here, rook g7 check, and doing the whole maneuver to bring the rook to the h file to force this rook to come to the short side of the pawn and run out of squares. Now, in this variation, if you guys recall, we had king c7 check, rook to c7, king d8, and this allows this very good move, which brings the rook to the far side and threatens mate in one. So we gain a very important tempo. But what happens here if instead of playing king to d8, black is going to be stubborn and go king to b8? And I think this is probably the most technical part of this endgame. There's going to be a couple of positions here that are really worth memorizing, because this is stuff that you see quite often in practice. So the first move that we're going to do here as the white pieces is we're going to challenge the rook on the e file. So rook to e7, and basically asking the rook, right, where do you plan on going? How are you going to defend this endgame? So we've seen many times that rook d1, placing the rook behind the pawn to stop it from advancing, is probably the most stubborn defensive method that the defending side could come up with, right? So after rook d1, we have king c6, moving the king out of the way so that we can advance the pawn. Rook c1 check, king d7, inching closer and closer, and rook to h1. Now, this position is very important, I believe, to memorize, because much like the position with king d7, this is really easy to screw up. So we've advanced the king, we've gotten the rook to move itself away from behind the pawn, so it's very easy in this position to go d6. And d6 would once again blunder the half a point. Now this is just a draw. Why is this a draw? Well, because black's plan here is going to be to try to bring the king closer to the pawn by means of king to b7. And if you were to move your king d8, right, to continue with the plan of moving the pawn forward, we have king to c6, and the king has arrived in time. And after d7 check, or not check, after d7, we have king d6. Now if you try to be fancy here and go like king c8 hanging the rook, because you're going to queen next move, it really doesn't work, because we have rook to c1 check. The king has to come back, and the rook comes back. And if you go the other way, rook g8 check. If you try to be clever, you have rook h8. And if you try to, cover the queening square with your own rook, there's check, and this guy's falling off the board. So very easy way to screw up that position. So if not d6, then what is the move? Now here the winning move looks a little bit abstract, a little bit difficult to understand at first. But the winning move here is rook to e2. And the point of it is that when black attempts his plan of bringing the king closer, we're going to go rook b2 check, forcing the king to move further away from the pawn. So for instance, after rook e2, since we are removing ourselves from the 7th rank, which is protecting us from the checks, black of course goes rook h7 check, king to c6, rook to c7 check, king to d6. And now, for instance, if the defending side wants to be stubborn and keep the rook on the 7th file so that the king can't advance any further, this really doesn't work because we have rook e8 check, and when the king drops back to the 7th, we just exchange the rooks, and of course we're going to have a basic winning endgame here. But let's say that they try to be a little bit more stubborn, and instead of bringing the rook to h7, they drop back once again with rook to c1. Here, patience is very important. We go rook h2. Which side am I coming through? Am I going to b2? Am I going to h8? More importantly, it forces this rook to commit to some square. So we have king b7. It's like we're going to keep the rook on c1. We like it here. And here, a very instructive follow-up. King e6, rook e1 check, king d7, and the rook comes to the other side of the board to give checks from the side. Rook b2. We're also going to put an exclamation mark on this move. What an amazing move. Pushing the king further away, and now we advance the pawn finally. The king is cut off, and in just a few moves, this pawn will be making it to the d8 square. So black goes rook g7 check, and another very good move here, king to c8, with the idea that if black continues to just try checking from the side after rook g8 check, king c7 threatens checkmate. So big problem here, right? We have to do something about that. The rook continues giving checks from the side, but now we also have d7. So which is it going to be? Is it going to be checkmate, or is it going to be queening the pawn? So very important positions there to memorize. Now here, there is also an alternative. So we just saw a very instructive way of winning after king b7, because black doesn't want to move its rook. But you also have the choice of going rook g1 here to try to check from the side. And again, here in this position, it's very important to be very patient. You go king c6, rook c1 check, and king d7. Rook g1, we have d6, rook g7 check, king to c6. The rook drops back. You're just going to continue annoying that king for as long as it can. But now, very important move, rook to h8 check. And now, not only is it kicking the king away further from the pawn, but we're taking control of the queening square. We're going to see why that's so important here in just a little bit. So we have rook to a7, or not, excuse me, not rook, king to a7, d7 check, and the king is just going to inch closer and closer and closer, and you can't do anything about this pawn queening. If you move here, I go here, you have to sacrifice the rook, and it's a winning endgame for the white pieces. So all that to say, in this position, do not go rook e1 and go rook to d1. And now the drawing method is going to be the same as we saw in the previous video. So king d6, threatening checkmate. Now, as you all remember, always when defending, we go to the shorter side of the pawn, which in this case would be towards the queen side. King c8. What an amazing move, saving this position. We have rook to g8 check, king b7, and rook d8. We saw this same maneuver also in the last video, and the idea is the same exact one. We're going to defend the pawn from the front so that the king can move out of the way and we can advance the pawn. So once the rook comes to d8, the rook comes to the side. The importance of bringing the king to the short side of the pawn so that we have the long side to give all those checks from the side. And once the rook comes back to e8, it's like, all right, if you give a check on h6, I'll just cover, which should still be a draw. But we're going to be stubborn and we're going to bring that rook back to d1. Like, you are not going to advance your king You are not going to push your pawn. We're going to keep this rook here. So now white tries to defend the pawn from the side instead of from the front. Now, but because, and this is the same as the last example, the method is exactly the same. Because the rook has abandoned the 8th rank, we now have king to c8. What an amazing move. King to e7. And we bring the king closer to the pawn, king to c7, so that it cannot advance. And we have achieved pretty much the same position as we saw in the last video, where it's kind of like a variation of the Philidor defense, where black is able to hold on to the draw. Alright guys, and if you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching.